success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, you Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Andrea MacKenzie. She is the founder of Lead with Harmony. You know what? I think Lead with Harmony does so many different things, and MacKenzie brings so many stuff to the table. So I'm going to do this. Andrea, what's your elevator pitch? If someone asks you, what do you do? How would you describe yourself and your business?
Sure. So, first of all, thank you for having me on, Vinny.
My pleasure.
My my expertise is in leadership and team development. So I help business owners and executives hire, lead, and develop teams specifically for success, growth, and well-being at the same time.
When being that you're in that kind of sector of, I guess, guidance, coaching, consulting, that kind of sector, I mean, how do you separate yourself, or how would you say you separate yourself from other people in that same sector?
Yeah. There's so many people in the under the umbrella of coaching, and people can get very adamant about what that means. And so oftentimes I don't even call myself a coach. But what separates me is that I come from many different modalities, right? So my background is as an MBA. I came out in pure straight ahead process and org improvement consulting. So that expertise piece, that consulting piece, sometimes that's what I bring to the table, right? But also in my background in corporate, I did a lot of training. So sometimes I bring training to the background. And my experience with training is make it entertaining, make it engaging, make it experiential, right? So training, consulting, and then coaching, which I learned from an ICF accredited program, IPEC, which means I drank the Kool-Aid and really went for it in terms of understanding what it means to be a coach. That modality is very much about empowering other people. So when I have the permission to really coach someone, when somebody's really ready to get into the right mindset, which is really where the magic happens, then I put on my coach hat and I'm raring to go. So I think what differentiates me is I really try to sit with the person to see what is it they really want here. Do they want the expertise? Do they want some training and to know how to do something? Or are they ready to go full on into the coaching, which is probably the most courageous place to go and really open up and do the work they need to do to be a great entrepreneur or a great team leader?
How do you know someone's in the right space? Because people say, okay, I'm willing to be coached, I'm willing to hear what you have to say. But there's a difference, I think, from people actually taking in and actually listening to what you have to say. So how do you know that someone's actually ready to be coached?
Yeah. So it's such a good question, and it's not an easy thing to know. You could get midway and realize that the person's not, or maybe something has shifted where you have a lot of resistance going on. But I would say that at the very beginning, sitting down with somebody to help them understand what a coach really is, what is it we're going to be embarking on, right? And ultimately, it comes down to: are you ready to be responsible? Are you ready to see that everything in your life is something you're creating? Are you ready to go ahead and actually make the changes you need to make and do the things you need to do, whatever it takes to get to the place where you want to go? You've got to have that motivation, that drive, because the coach will hold you to that motivation, and will ask you the tough questions, but you got to know you're ready. You got to know that you're willing to do what it takes. And usually I can glean that from a conversation with somebody. And sometimes we get started and there's bumps, there's resistance, there's things to get through. But as long as the person is willing to face those things, I think you're okay. And it might take longer than you think to get where you want to go, you know.
Well, let's rewind. I mean, a young Andrea, were you into like helping other people? Was it about building a business? I mean, who were you growing up?
Yeah. Oh boy. Um, Young Andrea was a performer and a creative, very much all about entertainment and but also digging deep into why, digging deep into, wait a minute, why are we doing this every probably to the point of driving everyone nuts. And so, yeah, I mean, I was pondering the meaning of life at 5 years old. waking up at night just, oh, why are we here? So I mean, I can get very, very deep into things. And so I mean, yeah, there's an element of curiosity, there's an element of disruption, right? Not just going with the flow, that is intrinsic in me. And I think that's what I carry through in my brand now, which is, yeah, you're gonna get challenged if you're working with me. If you're not ready for a challenge, don't work with me. And secondly, the minute that you tell me that I'm infringing on any way on your freedom or your authenticity or your fulfillment of what it is you want to do, I will back off. So I constantly teeter that line of like, let's go, and then listening back to make sure the person is in harmony, right? Lead with harmony. They're in harmony with their self, that they're aligned with what they want, know, and do in life.
So how does, I mean, and we're gonna, I guess, get to it. I mean, so you're a young woman, and you're kind of like assessing, why is this, why is that? So did that take you
Yeah.
through the schooling route? I mean, where did that take you, or is it more life experiences? I mean, where did that take you?
Yeah, so I was at a very, a college prep sort of high school where everybody was competing on grades and such, and here I was, just all I wanted to do was sing and write music. So I actually went to school for music. My
Oh
undergrad was
wow.
in music. I studied jazz at USC and sang. That was what I did. And while that may seem, I don't know, ill-advised, it actually prepared me for a lot. I mean, and I think that that's one of the things I try to help team leaders, people who are hiring. I try to help them understand is, don't just look at the resume. I was ready to improvise. I could pull things. I could trade fours with anyone, right? From a business perspective, I had a head on my shoulders. I was ready to jump in and try anything. And I think once I got into the business world and people realized that, I got sort of taken advantage of a little bit because of that music degree. Well, I hit a wall, and so I went back for my MBA, again at USC, to study entrepreneurship, to take advantage of being a student and just get into the consulting world and meet a lot of folks in the entertainment industry, which is where I came straight out of school, and just learned a hell of a lot about myself. And I was a little bit older going into my grad years, so I was like all about the connections and network. And what I learned from that is priceless in terms of building a business. It's all about building relationships in
So
the
was
end.
your plan, like, originally to get into music and like have a music career, be a singer? I mean, what were your
What
plans
plan?
originally?
What plan?
Where
A
was the flow
plan?
taking you, I
Was
guess?
I supposed to have a plan? I mean, I think that's part of it. Is a lot of times we're told we need to have a plan at such a young age, and you're heading into like this investment of college, and you got to pick something. And for me, I was just following like, hey, this is what I love. And I know that not everybody has that opportunity. It was a privilege to get to go to school and study music the way that I did. It also became a stepping stone for me. I used it to my advantage, but not everybody can. The plan was, yeah, I wanted to write. I wanted to really immerse myself in music, and it was awesome. It was so fun. I still write music. I still record music. I still do all of that. But there's a little bit of lead with harmony is a little bit of a double entendre, if you haven't
Yeah.
noticed.
Mm.
And I think there's something to continuing to do all the things you love. And as an entrepreneur, I get to create, and I get to ask why as a coach. So I'm not so out of alignment with, who I am, and really being that creative person.
You said that when you joined the business world, right, that you
Yeah.
were taken advantage of because you had that music degree. What do you mean by that?
I think that it was like, you're not going to get anywhere with this degree. There's
Okay.
certain things where people, and this is exactly what I'm saying is, really be careful about the must-haves in terms of education. People get an education they didn't necessarily do so well in, but they have that degree. I mean, you don't know what people know, and you also don't really know necessarily what they're great at, which may or may not be aligned with what they studied in school. People a lot of times do what they think is the safe route or the smart route in school because, oh, I can get a job with this kind of degree, but it's not really aligned with who they are either. So I would say, as much as a resume is sometimes a nice first pass for those must haves, in particular when you're hiring from an entry level position, is probably the least important thing. um, if you got somebody who's aligned with how you want them to work and the values that you want to build and grow in your culture, it's probably a lot more important. You can teach people a lot of things as long as they want it.
So at that time, right, when you're in the business world, you feel there's a cap to how far you can take it because the hindrance, I guess, of a passion of a music degree. So you have to go back for your MBA. I mean, how much of a debate was that of going, oh, I got to put the time to actually do my MBA now because that's the only way I can go forward? Was there any kind of debate?
So let's just put one more factor into this, okay?
Yeah.
I've always loved business.
Okay.
Even when I was studying music, I started a record company, and
Oh, wow.
and,
Okay.
and yeah, I mean, it wasn't lucrative, but I was like, I'm gonna do it myself. I'm gonna be like the
Hmm.
Ani DeFranco, like I'm not gonna go looking for. I want to do this. I want to be in charge. So I've always had that. I come from, my dad's an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. Like that was never something that was ever really in question to me. Like if I'm gonna do anything, it's gonna be mine. So
Yeah.
let's just say that that's always been part of me too. But one thing that I always knew is you don't need an education to be an entrepreneur. You don't need an
Right.
education to be a great salesperson, right? So that's not even something you necessarily have to go to school for. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. You just got to go out there and do it. And that's something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs learn very quickly is like, oh, yeah, sales. If you know sales, you got a job, period. It's one of the hardest things to do. So great salespeople, kudos to you, right? But yeah, I mean, I also always wanted to get a graduate degree. I just didn't know in what. So I wasn't just grasping at straws like, oh, this is something I kind of have to do. So I'm going to
Mm.
go get that ticket. It was like, I always want to go to grad school. Let's see if I can get in. Let's see if I can get into a good school. Right. And then I want to be an entrepreneur. I'll probably make some good connections here and I'll learn about entrepreneurship. And maybe along the way, which I did, increase my ability to make money because all of a sudden I have this validity card. Again, do I think that that's true or right or whatever? Kind of doesn't matter, right? But yeah, I went into consulting to kind of dabble in a lot of things and see what kind of stuck. What did I
So
enjoy in the end?
did you
Yeah.
know that okay, I'm gonna get my MBA and this is gonna kind of guide me to consulting? Was that kind of an idea?
Um, I think I went into it thinking more wanting to start a business that maybe,
Okay.
if I was looking to start something, I would sort of validate that a little bit more. And also to have something to quote unquote fall back on, right?
Mm.
People always, always kind of put that in your head. Not that I subscribe to that anymore, but I think I did then. Um, yeah, I mean, I kind of went in not knowing if I wanted to go into marketing or finance or consulting. I think as I started to realize how little I knew about what I wanted, I realized consulting was the right place because I didn't want to get stuck in any particular function in a business and then be like sort of stuck there. So one of the things that's so great if you don't know what you want to do when you grow up, right, is to go into consulting because it automatically sort of bumps you into this place of, okay, this person's a problem solver. They're going to sink or swim, basically they're going to swim if they've done okay in the consulting world. And yeah, I think it's a good path when you're trying to feel things out. And I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up half the time. Who knows what we'll all grow.
Were you still working at that time while you were getting your MBA?
No, I went full time. I went to a full time deal. Yeah, I wasn't in a role where it sort of made sense. I was going lateral job to lateral job,
Hmm.
mostly entertainment and publishing, that kind of industry. And yeah, I just wanted to go full force. And I knew that if I went full time, although the investment's kind of crazy, both in terms of opportunity loss and the actual cost of the program, I knew I would have more time to actually focus on the networking, go out and take meetings with people. People talk to you while you're getting a degree. The minute
Mm.
that's over, they don't talk to you so easily anymore. So I was like, I'm going to milk this for all I can. And then, of course, I worked, I did an internship with PricewaterhouseCoopers over the summer and, that kind of thing. So you have to vie for those positions and compete and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Do you think if you would have went in back into the corporate world before, I mean, actually, I guess from schooling back to the corporate world and then try to transition it into consulting later on, you still would have done it? Or do you think having that cushion of going to school doing the consulting, doing the internship made it easier for you to kind of start your own business?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's consulting from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Yeah, I mean, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that I have on the podcast that they're in the corporate world, they're getting a steady paycheck, and they have to give that up to actually start their own business. And that can be pretty difficult for some people.
Yeah, I mean that's what I did coming out of consulting. You know, it was a good paycheck, and I went
Mm.
into doing consulting. At first, the same type of consulting, the more of the straight ahead process improvement and org development kind of stuff. Um, I actually really do think that spending several years in the consulting world before going into consulting in my own business definitely helped a lot, because you're just going to be doing the same type of thing in terms of estimating and pitching, and you're doing that stuff when you're at a a manager level in a consulting firm. You're involved with all of that. Here's what the project is, let's talk and figure out what they need. You're part of the sales process a bit, and so yeah, you're estimating, you're pitching, you're collecting information, you're answering questions off the cuff, all that kind of stuff that is going to happen when you're an entrepreneur. So I do think it sets you up a little bit more because you're constantly under the gun. And if anybody if anybody in corporate has experience with dealing with the consulting firms that come in, that it's some people immediately want to throw those consultants under the bus, like immediately.
Mm.
So you're going to face that as an entrepreneur too, that you're going to get criticized, you're going to get rejected, you're going to get all kinds of stuff that it's a little bit of definitely a little bit more of a training ground than having a straight ahead, I'm a corporate finance person or I'm a corporate marketing person. Yeah, because you're part of the family there, and it's a little bit easier to fit in and be part of the gang, so to speak.
How
You
how
know.
long would how long did of a jump did it take you from being part of that family like you're talking about, where you're working for someone else, till you started your own business? How long did that idea of it actually happening to actually coming fruition?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I had a client before I even jumped out of the boat.
Okay, so
Yeah, I mean, I knew somebody was like, "We need you to come over here," and I was like, "Okay, I'll come over there." And it wasn't necessarily, a forever thing, but it was enough for me to go, I can do this, and I know how to do this. Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody does things differently. Everybody starts their business in a different way. Uh, there's no right or wrong, but some people are looking for a little bit of an easier transition, I suppose, right? So if you can prove out whatever it is you want to sell, it doesn't have to be consulting services. It could be a product that you want to sell. If you can prove out that you've got a demand, do that. Do that while you're still employed, right? If you can, and then move on.
was there any moment where you're like, maybe I made the wrong decision?
Ah, yeah. I mean, is there any entrepreneur that's going to sit here and tell you that they didn't have doubts about, I mean, fear, worry, and doubt, the biggest issues ever in any, basically, even if you get a promotion, right? That stuff matters, in terms of being successful. Even if you're not an entrepreneur. Yeah, of course, there were times I was like, oh no. And then you have to let that fear sit and say thank you. I know you're trying to keep me safe in this world, and and just keep going because it's what you want. It's what I was saying at the beginning about being sure you're ready to do whatever it takes. It's something you got to be something you want. You got to want it.
What do you do? I mean, because I mean, some moments are difficult than others, right? And sometimes it's harder to see exactly the path you're going towards. So and you said you let it soak for a little bit, and then you just kind of keep going forward. Is it having affirmations? Is it having a bulletin board of a plan? I know young you didn't went with the flow and didn't have a plan, but now is it about basically having a plan, just where I'm going, and in the low moments, I just got to keep pushing through.
Yeah. I wish I could say I was more of a planner. And
Okay.
it's one of the things I know about myself in terms of, well, I use Kolbe assessments. It's one of my natural ways of being is to be a little bit more improvisational. Not surprising that being in jazz studies was very comfortable for me, just whatever came out of my mouth. But I do think a plan is important. So to that point, right, you may have some variability, but stay the course with something. Stay the course with something. Otherwise, you have no metrics. You have no idea what the heck is working or what's not working. So yes, you do have to set a direction for sure, and have some things that you know that you want to do and that you're going to commit to. It's about commitment more than anything else, not necessarily here are all the steps I'm going to do and I'm going to follow this exact plan to this exact timeline. And the other thing is, make sure you have people to help you. You're not going to be able to do it all. Like, for example, I have somebody helping me with certain marketing things who's a great planner and a great tester, and they know about A/B testing and sending me metrics, right? So you got to be able to hire people who fill in for your gaps and be ready to invest. If you're not ready to invest, if you're only looking to invest time and not money in your business, it's one of the worst mindsets to head into business with. Be ready to invest the minute you know you need something.
Now, what's the process? I mean, and what's the process you use, and what's the process you guide people to do? Because that's finding the right people, finding the right things to invest in, knowing you maybe invested in the wrong thing. Those can be very difficult decisions for any business. So, how do you kind of go through that, and how did you learn?
Yeah, you got to be ready to make mistakes too.
Hmm.
It can't be all perfect and tied up in a nice, neat little bow, right? That's just not how it works. If you're not, if you're not ready to potentially do it wrong, again, you're not ready to be an entrepreneur because you're going to do it wrong. Be ready to do it wrong and learn from doing it wrong. So that's one thing. But when you're talking about things like, and what are you going to invest in? I mean, yes, I could go all the way back to my business, my MBA days, and business plans are great if you're somebody who can really do it. And I mean, even myself, I had a basic idea. It wasn't like, every last detail of everything, but knowing where you want to be and having that all mapped out, knowing how much money you're going to need and how many sales you're going to need to make, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it can be really valuable, right? That really, really valuable. But in terms of investing in people and hiring, and that's one of the things that I help people with, you got to get really clear on what you need somebody for. And that requires knowing yourself really well. Again, where are your strengths? Where are your gaps? Where's the expertise that you don't have that you need to hire somebody? Like, one of the first things people know they need to hire and they get all up in a kerfuffle about is like legal. Yeah, you're going to need a lawyer and it's expensive, right? Or like CPAs, or, those things. Like, you don't do those things. You're going to need somebody. And if you don't get somebody, now you're in a lot of risk and potentially you're going to lose money on things. So, but there are some things that people just assume that they can bootstrap and do on their own, wear every single hat, and they're going to hate working in their business if that's the way they're going to go. So we have to work on what are the things as soon as possible that you can get off your plate, and then how do we hire the right people? And I say people in plural because you can't just dump everything else that doesn't fit for you on someone else, because most likely it's not going to fit one person. So you have to really get clear on what are your priorities? What's the first thing that needs to go? Some people go with immediately hiring a VA to get those, $10 to $15 tasks off their plate. I sometimes prefer to go with the expertise first, like the things that the higher end people that you need first, right? So it just depends on the business need, where your gaps are. There's a lot of investigation to do to really do it right.
You said like being okay with failing, right? What was the biggest failure that you think you went through?
Oh boy, the biggest there's so many failures. Which one do I pick? I mean, it's really the truth. It's constant failure. It's also constant success. It's like you
Yeah.
kind of look at both ends of that. Biggest failure. Oh boy, I don't wow, that's a really good question. I mean, I think part of it is the mindset piece is
Mm.
waiting too long to understand how important it was to get my head screwed on straight, to work with other coaches, to, particularly on the mindset piece, not just like execution, but I hate to say the word because a lot of people don't jive with this in the business world, but truly faith.
Mm.
Like your belief system. What do you believe is going to happen here is probably what's going to show up for you. And I kind of rolled my eyes on that stuff at first, like, oh, it's all airy fairy manifesting, whatever. And now I'm like sold. Yes, what you focus on appears. It's true. I am here to tell you it is true. In the hiring, for an example, in hiring, looking back on past failures, like, oh, I just want somebody who's not going to do this and is going to, not complain about this. And you're focusing on all the things you don't want. You're probably going to hire the person that's going to complain, walk out the door, tell you they want this, they want that, whatever it is, because you're focusing on what you don't want. So creating the new visions and continuing to up level the vision of what you want to create and believing in it, really believing in it.
Well, what's your vision of Lead with Harmony? Where, if we
Ah,
were talking in 5 years from now, what's your vision?
yeah. Oh boy. Lead with harmony. I think I think really it's a matter of honing in on better, like, sort of, I don't know. This is a really really tough question. Um Having like what I really want to do is create some sort of group thing.
Mm,
And it's a little cliche because a lot of coaches do group things, and I want to create something that really works and helps, because one of the things that I know about, like, the first mastermind group I was ever in, is I'm still like best friends with half the people I was in that group with because they were such a good group of entrepreneurs. So I
mm,
feel like that energy of like really creating something where people are creating a community. They're creating, like, if I need a resource across the other side of the country, I just had a call with somebody today. I
mm.
got like 3 people I could potentially use because of it. So there's something really great about that. And I think that's sort of the next level of where I want to get in my business in the next however many years. Maybe it's next year. I don't know. Is something that I can enroll entrepreneurs in where, they're growing and they're also growing a team. And that's a really small subset of entrepreneurs, by the way. It's about 19% actually have
Hmm.
employees. So,
Oh wow.
yeah, it's a
No,
special
that's
sort of
nice.
elite group. If you're one of them
Mm.
listening, congratulations to you. Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
it's funny because I've talked to people on the podcast where they talk about some people yo-yo, right? Where it's like based off their business, they hire the wrong people, they get bigger, and they downsize again. And sometimes in the end, they just go, you know what? I was that part of that 19, but I'm gonna stay part of that 81 because it's
Yeah.
just too difficult dealing with other people. So it's a talent, like you talked about, finding the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an art form, and also not giving up, because that's exactly it. All of a sudden, you're like, this is not where it's a revolving door. It's too much work. You hire the wrong people, it becomes more work, not
Oh
less
yeah.
work. And you want to hire people where you feel like you're doing less work. The other thing too is people always want to lowball. Like, I don't know if I can afford, and it's not necessarily that they don't want to pay somebody. I think they ideally would. It's just they're afraid they're not going to be able to sustain that person. I've heard, entrepreneurs say, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm afraid that I'm not gonna be able to pay this person. They're not gonna be able to eat dinner tomorrow night." Like, it's like all of a sudden there's a whole new level of responsibility, and yeah, it's not easy. But I would say you get what you pay for, even when you're hiring. It's like, go for the gold. Get the person who's going to do it, because it's going to take it off your plate and your business is going to grow. It's hard, it's a tough one to swallow, right? Scary.
Thank, thank you so much for being on the Road to Growth podcast. If someone's listening right now and they're looking, maybe they're scared, maybe they need that help and they need to give you a call. So, what's the best way of them reaching out to you or hearing more information to see if they'd be a good fit?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say you can just reach out to me via email. It's
Okay.
Andrea@leadwithharmony.com. I'll give you my email. Um, my website is leadwithharmony.com. There is a free job ad checklist up there, so you could grab that and see if you're even close from a job advertisement perspective. And I'm on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter there that you can check out. Definitely follow me on LinkedIn, Andrea MacKenzie, right there. And another thing, is it okay if I offer something just real quick,
Yeah,
a
please,
little
please, please.
freebie for everybody listening?
Yeah.
So just for the Road to Growth listeners, I have a special code to go grab an audio that I created. So going back to my music and audio background, I created a delegation visualization to get you into that mindset of having the most wonderful team. So it's a little sort of micro course with an audio, and it's at delegationvisualization.com. And the free code for Road to Growth is Road to Growth, all one word,
No.
capitalized. I made it easy, Road to Growth. So check that out. See if it resonates with you.
If you had a chance to talk to your younger self that this is the last question, but your younger self that was building that production company, that music production company, do you think you could have helped them get to the next level?
Oh. Oh, the music industry was in such flux back then. Yeah, I do now. Now I do. I
Yeah.
think especially, well, especially my future self, because I know which way the music industry went. That's what I would have been like. Here's where you go. I was in the 90s, the late 90s, which was like, we didn't know mp3.com doesn't even exist
Oh
anymore.
yeah.
I mean, it was like we didn't know what the heck was going on. So, yeah, I think especially if I had all the knowledge of where things ended
Oh
up,
wait.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I was still like paying to record in studios, and now I record in my house, and do
Wow.
tracks right here. It's a whole other world, Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today. Hopefully, everyone listening got some great nuggets. If you're watching us live on YouTube or Twitch or Periscope, one of those platforms, we were a tad bit late. But if you're listening to the audio, you're not the wiser, so it doesn't really matter for you. But hope you got some great nuggets here. Heard the flow. I mean, you kind of tell. I know Andrea, she's talking about that when she was younger, there was a flow to it yet, and then there wasn't actually a plan. I'm reading to the lines. I really do feel like she has some sort of plan and she has a schedule. She has it mapped out. So, I mean, just because you were one way back then doesn't mean you have to be that way today. Go to where your passion is, go to your goal is. And if your passion is music, but you have a love for entrepreneurship, then incorporate them together, right? Enjoy both passions together. Thank you guys. Please subscribe. Please share. Go in the show notes. Go find Lead with a Purpose. Lead with Harmony, not Lead with Purpose. Lead with Harmony. Sorry about that. Bye, guys.